What the hell did I just watch? In all sincerity, who or what in God's forbidden name will be driven to create such a sick and twisted monstrosity? Nothing could honestly ruin something for you any worse than this did for me. 2 days ago, I was looking on eBay for seasons of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I was specifically looking for the second one since I own most of the others. Now, I'm the type of person who likes to conserve my money, so I was trying to find the seasons for really cheap. However, I wasn't able to find any for under $20, so I gave up on searching. I asked a friend of mine if he knew any good sites that sold cheap TV episodes similar to eBay. He then asked, "Why would you be searching for cheap movies when you can just torrent them on the Pirate Bay?" As he chuckled to himself. I then said to myself, why not? So we hung up and I looked up the episode on Pirate Bay. I scrolled through the choices, checking the comments to see if the torrents were actually legitimate. All I saw were a handful of comments in each link saying something similar to, "Do not download this. It contains a System 32 virus that took me forever to delete," and other things like that. After a while of being bored searching through the torrents, I saw one with no comments, and it was called Aqua Teen Hunger Force ISO. I know that it's a bad idea to download things with unclear contents, but honestly, I was sick of looking all over. I mean, it's just a show. Why the hell does it have to be so damn difficult to find something like that? So I began downloading the torrent. Oddly enough, it reached 100% at a much faster time than my downloads normally take to complete. So I unzipped the folder and ripped it into my DVDs folder. I then opened up my documents to click the folder, but I couldn't find it. I felt confused. Quickly, I found out that the DVD folder was strangely renamed to what? Which threw me off because files aren't allowed to contain question marks, not to mention that the file was somewhat renamed without my command. Remaining unworried, I unopened the folder, and there the file was named Aqua Teen Hunger Force ISO. I clicked it, and Windows Media Player popped up. I pressed full screen and started watching. The WB logo appeared along with the piano music. However, the music sounded abnormally different. It sounded slightly distorted and off-key, as if it were being played at a slower speed. The last note holding the music proved my thought right. It definitely was off-key. This aggravated me, making me think, wonderful, it's glitched. Instantly, the menu popped up, and what I saw took me by surprise and sent chills down my spine. Remember the DVD case for the third season of Aqua Teen Hunger Force? The disturbing, creepy cartoon depictions of Meatwad, Shake, and Frylock killing things with insane lunatic facial details? That was exactly what this menu was. It appeared with a sudden bip sound, the same noise you'd hear from plugging something into a large speaker while it was still on. I don't know if it was the brightness of my laptop or the fact that the faces were illuminated due to video quality, but the faces were really creeping me out. It sent a chilling jolt of fear from my neck down to my feet. The menu choices were Play All, Episodes, and Setup. Wanting to get the menacing look of the characters off my screen as soon as possible, I clicked Play All. I considered closing and deleting it, but I decided to just go on ahead and let it play. The screen went back with a softer bip sound this time around. It stayed like that for about 10 seconds. I was about to check out what the deal was when the intro came and took me by surprise. Instead of a Dr. Weird interlude or even the beginning drum beat of the song, it just started piercing loud with, "My name is..." Again, surprising the hell out of me. Nonetheless, I was relieved that the sound wasn't distorted this time. The intro seemed particularly normal. Well, almost normal until Meatwad transformed into what seemed to be a tombstone with dirt covering instead of an igloo. I didn't notice it too well because I wasn't going to pay too much attention to an intro that I've seen 100 times already. But from what I also think I saw, Meatwad's face wasn't his typical toothy smile. It was his face of displeasure and dislike, the same look he gets when Shake breaks one of his toys, that sad and depressed look. Shake's face seemed blank and completely expressionless. He showed less expression than his typical bored face. Frylock's expressions, however, remained normal. The rest of the intro played out just fine. However, when it ended, a strange negative style-like image flashed on screen with a sound of static, and then the episode played. I don't know what the hell that was, but from how much I could pick up from it, it's something I wouldn't have wanted to see at 2 a.m. alone in my room. The episode playing was the one with a snake. Shake brought in a large cardboard box, claiming it to be for Meatwad. The episode was playing normally until one thing really set me off. The box said cannibal on it. I know I don't really remember this episode very distinctly from what I saw it a long time ago on Adult Swim, but that box definitely didn't say it at that time. I got a strange vibe coming from this episode, making me feel rather uncomfortable. I kept watching it and everything seemed normal besides the strange creepy vibe from the cardboard box, the off-tune Warner Brothers intro, the sudden start of the episode, and that fucking main menu screen. Then at the part where the snake was sinking his teeth into Meatwad, the screen went black. I checked the timestamp and wondering what the hell was wrong with this file. Eventually, after 26 seconds, it cut to the part where the snake had swallowed Meatwad and Shake. You could clearly see their outlines of their bodies bulging from the snake's belly. But here's the creepiest part. In the normal episode, I remembered Shake and Meatwad just being in a regular standing position while inside of the snake. This time, Shake's pose was crooked and looked very awkward. He was bent backwards like his spine was fractured or something. There was something about it that made it seem like someone or something purposely broke it by force. Meatwad was in the shape of what seemed to be a chubby baby infant slightly turned over from a sitting up position. Very displeasing to look at. I kept on thinking that this episode couldn't get any stranger, and Shake was rambling on as usual, and then he said something very muffled and strange. I was hardly able to somewhat make it out. It sounded something like, "Get the camera so that we can post this on the internet when Babywad gets rid of his stomach acid." I didn't think that Shake would ever say something like this. Hell, I didn't even think that a joke like that would even be allowed on Metalocalypse or Family Guy or hell, even South Park. The way that it was delivered was just morbid and devilish, as if he wanted pain and misery more than anything. Shake always loves making Meatwad miserable and tormenting him, but he only does it to rag on him, not to make him suffer. I realized that I was feeling a little bit too sympathetic for Meatwad. I mean, it was just a cartoon character, right? Who cares? It's not even real. I continued watching the episode. Frylock informed Shake and Meatwad that he was going to laser the snake to get them out. But then, in the middle of Frylock's eyes lighting up, zapping the snake, it cut to black with the bip sound again. I was really getting sick of this. I waited for about 30 seconds while checking my phone. I looked up, and just as I was about to skip ahead, the laptop lit up so fast it startled me. Frylock screamed at the top of his lungs, "Oh my god, what have I done?" The sound blared out of the speakers so loudly that it felt like it was causing a violent rumbling impact upon my spine, making me jolt and spaz and panic and fear. There was Frylock's face. His face was very closely detailed like some of the faces in SpongeBob. His eyes were opened up so wide that his eyes were almost popping out of his sockets. Veins in his forehead were very visible with his blood coursing through them. His teeth were sharp and crooked despite his braces, which amplified the disgusting nature of them. And his eyes were shocking, menacing, demonic, insane, and riddled with psychotic lunacy. All of his veins were popping out in blood red. The bottom half was bloodshot, turning from a dark red to a suddenly distinct red where his maniacal pupils were. He had red irises. They seemed to be flowing with blood. Gore was splattered all over his face. Pieces of Shake, who for some reason had human innards, and Meatwad were slowly sliding off of the walls. The remains of them were just covering the rest of the background behind him. Blood, guts, and ruptured organ tissue stained the walls in a catastrophic bloodbath. The walls were smeared with nothing but bodily bits. It wasn't just the gore that was traumatizing to look at, it was Frylock's face. He stared deep into my soul and past it. His face was unbearable to look at. I jumped up and fell back off my bed in one motion. I was breathing heavily and my heart was skipping beats. Looking up, something about the laptop made it seem like it was turning into Frylock's face directly at me during the fall. After a moment of disbelief and fear, adrenaline rushed through my whole body, and I leapt up to the laptop to shut it. The sound kept blaring out of the speakers. The whole time I could hear Frylock's voice screaming and wailing, What have I done? I've killed them all! In false hopes of doing anything, I slammed down the laptop, trying to get it to shut up. While shivering with a tingling, numb feeling throughout me, I turned the laptop and took out the battery. Frylock continued to wail even though the battery was out. Eventually, it halted to a sudden stop. The creepiest feeling coursed through my body, throwing it in my mind to a state of insanity and fright. I was breathing very heavily, hyperventilating so loudly that the noise was echoing throughout my room. My eyes had widened like a madman. It took me a good 15 minutes to collect myself and wonder what the hell was going on. After a good hour of calming down at the slightest amount, I decided to reboot my laptop to delete the file. I pressed my button and the laptop began firing up. The, quote, Windows was not shut down properly, unquote, menu came up. I resumed Windows normally. Immediately, the same pattern of gore stains I had previously saw faintly appeared on my screen. Same layout, same exact pattern. I was scared. I assumed that the brightness of the blood showing up burnt my screen. I was pissed, but I was more scared than anything. When the desktop loaded, the gore was even much more visible. It looked similar to Modern Warfare 2 when you get injured and have to get cover, except far more realistic. It literally looked as if someone blew their fucking brains out all over my goddamn screen. The worst thing about it was that the blood and guts were slowly dripping downwards. It was very noticeable. I did everything I could to get rid of it, adjusting the screen resolution, the display, restarting the goddamn thing 4 times. The blood wouldn't go away. My laptop was officially cursed with Frylock's murderous guilt. And then a window popped up. It was a Windows Media Player. I knew it wasn't going to be a pleasant sight. I must have clicked that X button 450 plus times, but it wouldn't go away. Looking near the bottom of the window, the title said, "Oh my god," in capital letters. It scared the hell out of me. I clicked the timeline somewhere in the middle and hoped I wouldn't see something that wouldn't fuck with my head. Anything could have done the job. It didn't work. Frylock appeared with the same menacing, insane look. This time he was holding Carl upside down with the back of the house near the brick wall. The word cannibal was sprayed in graffiti on the bricks. He had a piece of flesh hanging from his teeth, and he was holding up a scalping knife on his stomach. Carl's face was the worst I had ever seen. He had 2 bloodshot, bulging eyes looking ready to pop out. His jaw hung wide open even though he was upside down. He was missing most of his teeth, and the ones that were there were grotesquely crooked. Blood ran from his mouth and nose down to his scalp, which was peeled like a banana. Frylock's face slowly grew into a smirk of twisted satisfaction as he brought the scalping knife to Carl's belly and began cutting. Guts were pouring out like a fountain. I couldn't take it anymore. My eyes were bulging out of their sockets as I pressed Control-Alt-Delete over and over and over and over again, but nothing worked. I ripped out the battery and threw the laptop behind the bed. The sounds of excruciating pain, gurgling, and flesh ripping continued for 15 seconds. 15 fucking seconds that seemed like an eternity. The sound finally stopped and I just laid down on my bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. I couldn't think of anything but the blood splattering. It was burnt into my mind. My ceiling seemed to be thriving with exploded flesh and human entrails. I had a hard time sleeping that night, but somehow I managed. I passed out at around 8 a.m. I then began having nightmares about waking up with blood and flesh all over my face and smeared bowels my hands. And one of them, a piece of intestine, itched my nose, so I reached up to scratch it, only to pie myself in the face with salty-tasting gore. The blood burned my eyes, and I panicked and ran to the bathroom only to find that my face looked just like Frylock's. I screamed and woke myself up, sweating with fear. I could never get that image out of my head. Every time I looked somewhere, everything seemed to symbolize the gore pattern on Frylock's face. All I knew for sure was that I was never gonna watch that fucking show ever again. After a long time of being haunted by that scene of fuckery, I decided that the only way to get it to stop tormenting me was by accepting it. Accepting that it would be a part of me for a very long time. Funny thing about it, The moment I accepted that, it was when I started waking up with bloody noses. I'd go to the mirror, turn on the light, and I'd find my own blood smeared all over my face. In the same exact pattern, every single time. I'm not sure about any of you out there, but I honestly found this story to be kind of an interesting one. Now, the only reason I'm going to start out this off by saying that the only reason I decided to give this story a shot was primarily because of Gory Parody's own productions and reviewing the story that she provided some time back. I will try and make sure to post a link to her narration in the description below so that way you guys can get another perspective of the story. With that said and done, I do want to start this off by saying that this review is going to be a lot shorter than most of my other reviews, mostly due to a few time constraints right now because I have a few other things that I need to do, followed up by some drawings and things like that. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what I need to do at this point. But anyway, with that said, let's actually get into the story. To put it as bluntly as I possibly can, this story was, for the most part, just okay. Not outright amazing, nor outright terrible, but a simply okay story. To start off, let's look into the protagonist of this pasta. The protagonist, at least for creepypasta standards, was pretty believable in certain circumstances. Primary reason why I genuinely believe this is because of the fact that unlike most other creepypasta OPs in the universe of creepypastas, the protagonist actually reacts rather realistically with certain plot points and elements as they play on throughout the story. For example, getting the thing off of Pirate Bay, some of the bip sounds happening, a couple of the oddities and the like, the reaction from the creepy... Seriously, if you've ever seen that picture that was described at that main menu screen, that right there is enough to send a couple of chills down your spine. It is relatively creepy. And things of that nature gradually on, even during the episode itself, were pretty realistic. I mean, let's be honest, if you sat there and you came across an episode like this, wouldn't you kind of freak out a little bit, or at the very least be slightly uncomfortable watching something like this? I know for a full-on fact that I personally would have, however. Unfortunately, though, this doesn't last for too long, at least until around the ending of the pasta, that is, with the protagonist stating how they'll never watch the show ever again, which... I hate that cliche with such a hatred that I can't even describe it because many of you already know how much I can't stand this. Or the fact that they're constantly seeing the gore patterns repeatedly, and this is mentioned quite a lot throughout the entirety of the pasta later on, specifically about the gore patterns being visible, and just the constant gore and things like that being kind of thrown in. And, you know, that the person... Look, I get it. Nightmares are nightmares. People have nightmares all the time. And, of course, you know, some people, depending on the person in question, are going to have nightmares relating to if they happen to see something creepy like that. I mean, so, it's not entirely unbelievable to have nightmares like such, but to constantly have nightmares repeatedly of the same thing happening, especially with the details getting a lot more, well, detailed? I don't know. Something about the whole element of the protagonist sitting there and pieing themselves in the face with salty tasting gore, just kind of made me laugh a little bit inside. I don't know why exactly, but I feel as though that the gore incorporated into it was rather unnecessary, including the ending part where the protagonist's nose starts to bleed. Now, if there was an explanation in the story for why this was the case, and I do know that there's a second part to the story, so I will do a narration of that if I can find it. If there was an explanation for the reason why the, bloody noses and everything happened, that would be a lot more realistic and everything, but it just kind of seems to come completely out of nowhere, which to me is just a major head scratcher. And yeah, to be honest, why exactly does this protagonist immediately, well, I wouldn't say immediately loses their mind, but gradually starts to really lose their mind more and more about this one single Aqua Teen Hunger Force episode? I mean, maybe perhaps I'm a bit desensitized with pastas like these, and, I'm not looking at it through a more in-depth perception of the mindset of the protagonist, but that's just something that's kind of more of a head-scratcher than really a negative aspect of the story, but still, why exactly is that the case? Now, as for the story itself, as much as I found the pacing of the pasta to be very good, a very good positive, and actually kind of interesting, especially with the way the protagonist managed to find the episode, the rest of the pasta had some moments that were rather unrealistic and just downright confusing at times. Like, for one example, why exactly did the episode suddenly have Frylock go completely insane and start killing people because of the incident? I do get it that in the pasta itself, it wasn't really mentioned about what happened during that time after Frylock killed Shake and Meatwad until after he started sitting there and going after Carl. Maybe during that specific duration, there probably would have been a better explanation and the like, and maybe that's what we might get in part 2 of the story, perhaps. I'm hoping so. But still, though, I mean, it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And even when Frylock did the thing that he did, why exactly does his face suddenly automatically become demonic, spooky, scary, and things of that nature? It doesn't really seem to fit. I get it, it's a creepypasta and the like, but seriously though, you couldn't have gone out of your way to kind of gradually have, Frylock go slightly insane? I mean, maybe that's just me, but still. Maybe something a little bit more realistic in relations to this could probably be, maybe Frylock going more and more insane gradually over time after he's continuously trying to sit there and bring back, Shake and Meatwad. Because if you know anything about the show, Frylock is a genius. He does know how to do certain things. I mean, hell, if you've ever watched the actual show itself, you'll know that he managed to sit there and bring Carl back to life numerous times after killing him, and through various funny ways. One of these being an entire body full of eyeballs. God, people, that episode was really freaking funny. But that's the thing. If Frylock was able to do that with Carl's severed head after being separated from his body for such a long time and still managing to keep with him and everything, why not sit there and have Frylock do the exact same thing? But instead, having it continuously fail and Frylock basically going more and more insane after a certain period of time. That right there, in my honest opinion, would sit there and would have made the episode a lot more believable, and in my honest viewpoint, a lot scarier to a degree. Because in the end, you'll start to see the mindset of him basically going more and more insane, and maybe even reminiscing over his past, with his friends and things like that, yada yada yada. Something like that could have actually added a lot more to the story itself. And another thing as well that I have to ask is, why is it that in a near instant, Frylock suddenly becomes evil all of a sudden? I know I've already made a mention of it, but I'm going to say it again. I mean, his facial expression being changed almost instantly after killing Frylock and Shake was kind of unnecessary. Again, it should have been something that should have been incorporated later on throughout the story, but it just wasn't. And that's just something that I find to be rather unfortunate, but regardless though, I felt this story was pretty entertaining. At least on that end. While I will admit that some of the gores, the cliches and the like did work in the story, I'm going to list off some of the cliches in this pasta that, in my honest viewpoint, either didn't work or, in a sense, they did work, but still, they need to be listed. A ton of blood, especially in the aftermath. Gore, a lot of it. Too much gore. Death, realistic eyes, realistic gore, black screens continuously happening, characters becoming evil/demonic for no other reasons or very little reasoning, Frylock, the demonic card being thrown in at random intervals, Frylock, lack of a proper storyline for the episode itself. Again, there's a part 2 of this story, and I will read that, but still. Oh, and did I mention gore and the like that's being included? Look, again, some of these cliches that were used were incorporated quite well with the pasta. Some of them being, for example, some of the gore, I repeat, some of the gore in the episode itself was fine. The off-tune Warner Brothers intro and things like that. Basically, something really kind of screwed up and the like from the download of the thing off of Pirate Bay, which is why I never trust that place. Don't ever go on there, by the way. Things of that nature, finding all those, yada, 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 yada. That explains a good bit of it. And so I can excuse some of those cliches. But still, I mean, excessive gore being thrown in afterwards. You know, Frylock's face continuously popping up into the protagonist and yada yada yada. I mean, for me, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, again, like I said, it worked a little bit in the story, which is a plus, but outside of that, the story was simply just as cliched as any other Lost episode pastas. I'm not going to beat around the bush here, people. The story was okay. It did a good job in regards to telling a decent story, you know, having a good plot line to it to an extent, being slightly realistic with the way that the protagonist procured the episode, and managing to work in a few cliches that didn't automatically kill the pasta's credibility. However, the various negatives that I mentioned in the cliches and in the actual concept of the story itself just kind of outweigh the story itself, well, outweigh most of the positives of the story. Not by too much, thank God, but enough to make the story just a simply okay pasta. Not great, not amazing, but simply okay. And that's why I'm giving the story a fair 5 out of 10. It was a bit of a mess, but more of an organized mess, if that's even a word. Kind of sounds more like an oxymoron than anything, but I digress. What did you guys personally think about this creepypasta? Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not? And also, what would you have done to help make this creepypasta a whole lot better? Let me know your personal thoughts down below in the comment section below. Anyway, thanks again for watching today's episode, you guys. Oh, and like I say, this is only my personal opinion, and if you disagree with it, that's perfectly fine too. We are all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. So, there's that too. Forgot to add that in the beginning of the final thoughts. So yeah, thanks again for watching today's episode of My Little Shadows. I'll be seeing you guys in the next video, and like always, roll the outro because I'm out.
In fear and surprise as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.